You know, for billions of people, the answer to the question, who is Jesus, is maybe the most important answer there is. But what is the actual core belief that sits right at the heart of Christianity? In this explainer, we're going to unpack that central claim, totally neutrally, just looking at its theological and scriptural roots. So let's dive in.
So here's the plan. First, we're going to set the stage by looking at how different major religions think about God or the divine. Then, we'll zoom in on the one really unique, central claim that Christianity makes about Jesus. From there, we'll dig into the biblical case for that claim, see how it actually pops up in a core Christian ritual, and finally, we'll unpack how this one single idea branched out into the thousands of different churches we see today.
Okay, so to really get a handle on any one belief, it really helps to zoom out and see the bigger picture. I mean, the search to understand the divine is as old as humanity itself, and boy, has it produced a whole world of different answers.
And you can see just how wildly the concept of God can vary. You've got Hinduism with one ultimate reality expressed through tons of gods. Then Buddhism, where the focus is on enlightenment, without a deity at all. You have New Age thought, where the self is divine. And then the single, all-powerful, transcendent God of Islam. And then you have the Christian view, a God who is loving, personal, and actively wants a relationship. And it's that idea of a relationship that really sets the stage for Christianity's most unique claim.
And that one-of-a-kind idea? Well, it all comes down to a single core belief. A belief about the identity of one historical person, Jesus Christ. It's called the doctrine of the Incarnation.
So the central idea of the Incarnation isn't that a great teacher somehow became divine. No, it's the belief that a divine being who already existed, God the Son, took on a complete human nature and literally stepped into our history. The theology has a very specific and, very precise term for this, the hypostatic union. Now, this isn't a belief that Jesus was half God and half man, like a 50-50 split. The doctrine insists he was 100% God and 100% man at the exact same time in one person. The two natures are perfectly united, but they're not mixed or watered down.
This verse from the Gospel of John is basically the bedrock of this entire belief. The Word, who the text has just finished saying was both with God and actually was God, became flesh. You really can't get much more direct than that. This is the foundational text for the Incarnation.
So, that's the claim, and let's be honest, it's an extraordinary one. So the obvious next question is, where does this idea even come from? What's the actual biblical basis for it? Let's take a look at the evidence presented in the Scriptures.
The case for this in the Bible really comes down to three main things: what Jesus said, what Jesus did, and how he reacted to the people around him. Let's take a look at each one.
Let's start with his words. This statement is incredibly direct. Jesus doesn't just say he was around before Abraham, he uses the specific phrase, I am. Now, for his Jewish audience, this would have been absolutely unmistakable. It's the sacred name God reveals to Moses at the burning bush, a name so holy it was never even spoken aloud.
And the reaction of his audience tells you exactly how they understood his claim. It was immediate and it was violent. They didn't think he made a mistake. They believed he was claiming the name of God for himself, which to them was blasphemy, an act punishable by death.
Now, this is interesting. You might think Jesus' favorite title for himself, Son of Man, points to his humanity, right? But the context is everything. It's a direct callback to a vision in the book of Daniel, where this divine Son of Man figure comes on the clouds and gets universal worship. In the Old Testament, coming on the clouds is something only God does. So when Jesus used this exact title and imagery at his own trial, the high priest knew exactly what he was claiming and immediately accused him of blasphemy.
All right, next up are his actions. This quote really gets right to the heart of the controversy. When Jesus claimed he had the authority to forgive sins, his critics were just outraged because they believed that was a power that belonged to God and God alone.
So, to prove he had this invisible authority to forgive sins, Jesus performed a very visible miracle. He healed a paralyzed man right then and there. He was basically saying, you doubt my authority to heal a broken soul? Okay, fine. Watch me heal a broken body. The miracle was presented as the proof of his divine power.
And the final piece of evidence is how Jesus responded to worship. The contrast here is so stark. Throughout the Bible, one rule is crystal clear. Worship is for God alone. When people tried to worship the Apostle Peter or even a super powerful angel, they were shut down immediately. Get up, I'm just a man. Don't do that. Worship God. Yet on multiple occasions when people worshiped Jesus, he accepted it. That acceptance is presented as a powerful, unspoken claim to his divinity.
So, if that's the scriptural case, how does this belief in Jesus' divine and human nature actually affect Christian life and practice? Well, we can see its impact most clearly in the central act of Christian worship, the Eucharist, which you probably also know as communion.
And right here is one of the biggest, most fundamental divides in Christianity. The Catholic view, called transubstantiation, holds that the bread and wine literally become the body and blood of Christ. On the other side, the general Protestant view sees them as powerful symbols, where Christ is present spiritually, not physically. This single difference in belief creates two profoundly different ways of worship.
But this isn't some modern debate. You can trace its roots right back to the Gospels. In the book of John, Jesus' teaching that his followers must eat his flesh and drink his blood was so shocking, so scandalous, that many of his disciples just up and left him on the spot. And crucially, the text points out that Jesus let them walk away. He never called them back to say, "Hey, wait, it was all just a metaphor."
And this brings us to our final section, the different ways of understanding who Jesus is, what he taught, and what kind of authority he passed on. Well, over 2,000 years, those differences have led to the incredible diversity we see in Christianity today. You can see these differences play out in core beliefs about authority. Just take the Pope. Is he the supreme authority, the vicar of Christ on earth? Or does he have a primacy of honor, kind of like a first among equals? Your answer depends entirely on how you interpret the authority Jesus gave to the Apostle Peter. And it's the same with the Bible. Is it the only source of authority, or is it one part of a larger sacred tradition? All of these massive institutional differences trace their way back to a fundamental disagreement about the authority that was established by Christ.
When you step back, the identity of this one figure has had these monumental consequences, shaping empires, inspiring timeless art, and defining the lives of billions. The question, who is Jesus, isn't just theological. It has been one of the most powerful and divisive questions in all of human history. And that leaves us with one final thought. What does this 2,000-year debate over one person's identity reveal about our own, deeply human search for meaning?